let us talk a little bit about receivers, and specifically receivers that are coming back for the 2018 Texas high school football season. Much in the same vein of what we've done the past couple of days with running backs and quarterbacks, there are some high-profile receivers that have left. Jalen Preston from Manville is gone, for example. There are other high-profile receivers who are back. Garrett Wilson from Lake Travis is back, for example. So, kind of a mixed bag here.
Yeah.
We're not focusing on those high-profile guys.
Yep.
The guys that you know and the guys that when I say Texas high school football receiver, that immediately spring to mind, those aren't the guys that we're focusing on here.
Right.
What I want to focus on is instead 5 guys who I think you need to know because I think they're going to blow up in 2018. For one reason or another, didn't do it last year. These all happen to be juniors. So
or maybe
senior
just
year.
they did. They're kind of flying under the radar.
Right.
Maybe you didn't realize how many yards they put up.
Exactly, because there's a couple guys who put up stupid numbers here that you're going to be like, wait, really?
Yep.
So let's start in 6A. Let's start actually down the street from our office.
Yes.
In Coppell. Wide receiver Blake Jackson. Coppell had a solid year last year running into the regional semifinals, 3 rounds deep in the playoffs. And a big reason why was their receiver, Blake Jackson, who was very clearly far and away their number one target. 70 catches, 943 yards, 15 touchdowns. That is something that kind of strikes me, is when you catch 70 passes and 15 of them go for scores, you're doing something right. That's more than 20% of your catches are going for touchdowns.
Pretty good with the yaks.
Which is funny because he's only so you're thinking, oh, okay, big red zone target.
Yeah.
5'10". 5'10". So
and
it's
6A.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
6A. So he's not exactly towering over people, but he's just a really solid receiver. That is going to be really important to how well Coach Mike DeWitt's Coppell Cowboys perform in 2018. And so keep an eye on Blake Jackson from Coppell. Another guy that's on my list who I think because of who he was catching the balls thrown by.
Someone had to, right?
Somebody had to.
Yeah.
Blair Conwright from Lubbock Coronado.
Yeah.
Lubbock Coronado, of course, had Quay Gray last year, who was so sensational.
Yeah.
He is off to the next level, but staying behind is Blair Conwright, who was absurd. Okay, 80 catches, 1,630 yards, 39 yards rather, and 23 touchdowns on the year. Now, obviously, how Coronado replaces Quay Gray will have a big impact on what kind of year Blair Conwright has. But I think it's worth mentioning that, yes, Lubbock Coronado is going to have to replace a quarterback.
Right.
They do not have to replace a number one receiver.
No.
They've still got him.
Yeah.
So if they find a quarterback,
they're
going to be just fine.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's an interesting kind of dilemma that we focus so much on the quarterback sometimes that the guy who's catching the pass, it takes two to tango, guys. Another guy down the 4A level, North Texas area, Kennedy Lewis from Melissa. I think this is a guy who is the 3rd most notable player on his own team and on his own offense, and the 3rd most notable player returning on his own offense.
Yeah.
Melissa brings back all of its weapons. Jabray Young, their running back, was fantastic. Brendan Lewis, their quarterback, was excellent. Well, Kennedy Lewis, all he did was catch 52 passes for 1,173 yards and 11 touchdowns. Here's a guy who, again, because of his teammates, probably didn't rise up. When you think of Melissa, maybe you think, oh, Jabray Young, or they've got a big offense, but maybe it's that Brendan Lewis, or maybe it's Jabray Young. Well, again, here's a guy who put up crazy numbers last year and was a huge integral part of a big-time Cardinals offense, who is returning. And what's interesting about him is whereas you talk about a guy like Blair Conwright, that the quarterback kind of overshadowed him, he's still going to be arguably the 3rd most notable player on the team. That doesn't mean, though, that he's not going to have a huge year. And so for me, keep an eye on Kennedy Lewis, the receiver from Melissa, a guy who could blow up as a junior coming up in 2018. The 3A level, let's go to Goliad. Let's talk Dontavian Clay. I think there is a notion that Goliad is a run-first team, and they do want to run the ball. I think I want to be clear that I think that is where they butter their bread, is running the ball. But I will say that this is a kid in in Dontavian Clay, who is almost single-handedly their receiving threat. They did run the ball. They did run for more yards than they threw for last year. But here's a guy who caught 37 passes for 866 yards and 9 touchdowns. So if you're doing the math at home, 866 divided by 37 is a cool 23-yard average per
is that
catch. All? Yes. So again, here's a guy who's a big play. And so yes, I think you're right. I think you're right if you are the kind of guy who goes, oh well, I mean, what are we even talking about? This is a guy who plays for a team that runs the ball all the time. And they do run the ball. I want to be very clear about that. They do run the ball.
But this is a special group they've got right now.
Yeah, but this is a special group, and they're bringing back 17 starters, including 9 on offense.
I'm telling you, they're an early sleeper pick right now. You got to look at them and expect a lot next year.
Yeah, especially down there in Region 4 of 3A Division 1. Keep an eye on Goliad, and specifically one guy who could be a huge factor of it. He was the district MVP, Dontavian Clay, the receiver for Goliad, a 3-year starter as well, which helps. And finally, down at the 2A level, let's go up into the Panhandle, and let's talk about Panhandle. Panhandle Panthers and their receiver, Luke Ray. He's a guy who caught 41 passes for 1297 and 14 touchdowns, which again, if you're keeping track at home, 1297 divided by 41 is 31.6 yards per catch.
Lord.
And I think that for Panhandle, this was a squad that entered the playoffs at 6-4. And then got hot and ended up finishing 9-5. Winning 3 playoff games and bowing out in the regional final. So I think that because of that, because they do have the very odd 9-5 record, they're like, how good were they? But I will tell you that I know Coach Dane Ashley's got to be fired up to bring back a guy like Luke Ray in conjunction with his quarterback Braden Durst, who's also back, a 2,000-yard passer.
Yeah, and they had such a breakout year last year.
Right, they really did. Especially they got hot late.
Yeah,
and when you do that, and when you bring back, those 2 important players. Now, look, they're only bringing back 4 starters on offense. These are 2 of them, so they're going to have pieces to replace. But you're talking about a good place to start at a 2A level. 2 guys who are going to play both ways. Obviously, they're safeties as well. Yeah. But Luke Ray, the receiver for Panhandle, is a guy to keep an eye on, a name to know heading into 2018 as a 2A receiver. There's always 1 or 2 2A receivers who go crazy town banana pants. Luke Ray is right in that kind of wheelhouse of could have that huge year at the 2A level.
Yeah, and at the 2A level especially, as you go up, it can kind of be nullified. But at the 2A level, if you really have some impact skill players, it can make up for a lack of experience at other positions in ways that it's a lot harder to do when you need that depth in the trenches and things like that as the schools get bigger. So I'm still pretty excited to see what Panhandle can do this year.
We're going to see what Dane Ashley can do there with the Panthers, and one guy you figure they're going to go to early and often is Luke Ray. So those are 5 receivers in Texas high school football. Keep an eye on in 2018. Thanks, Max. I really appreciate your positive reinforcement really feels.
That's your one compliment for this week.